It's my pleasure to welcome to the truth now, Joe Sweeney. He is an author of a now Amazon best-selling book, Dangerous Injustice. Now, what makes Joe such an interesting interview is that he served in the CIA for 25 years. He attended the United States Military Academy, graduating in 1987, went on and achieved his law degree from Vermont Law School, and upon graduation, entered the CIA National Security Law Honors Program, of which I really don't have any knowledge. Joe, welcome to the truth.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So tell us about the National Security Law Honors Program. Is that sort of an on-ramp to becoming a CIA employee or senior fellow?
It is one of the avenues by which the CIA hires attorneys. So, one nice thing about the CIA General Counsel's office is they hire attorneys at all different points in their career. So, for instance, my mentor when I came in was a former JAG attorney who was a retired colonel and had served 20 years as a JAG attorney in the Army. Whereas someone like me, I was coming in fresh out of law school. And that's what the National Security Law Honors Program was for. That was the mechanism to hire attorneys coming right out of law school.
So I've got so many questions to ask you, and I'm fascinated with your career and your experience, frustrated by the organization that you were employed by for 25 years. What did it feel like to you when you walked into the CIA? I'll just tell you, I've been there once. I entered the gates to Langley on a bus. I was there with a group of business owners, Young Presidents Organization. We had a cocktail reception and I felt creepy. I felt like, you know, different people. I don't know how many CIA people were in the room. There were 50 of us. I'm thinking there were 6 to 10 of them. And I felt like they circulated through the crowd, each working the crowd. And I had very cordial, pleasant interchanges with 3 or 4 people. I guess they decided I was a candidate. So they stopped coming around. I don't know how it works, but I just felt like I was being sized up. And then we met with the head of the CIA. It was under Bush the elder. Who would that have been? I'm having a moment. Do you know who I'm speaking of in the
So that would have been just a little bit before my time. I came in during the Clinton administration, and the director was John Deutsch.
Yeah, this was Bob somebody. He was a career Washington consummate swamp creature who I was never terribly fond of, but he had a long career. It'll come to me. Anyway, so tell me your experience.
I mean, when you first start working at the CIA, it is very intimidating because for the first time in your life, at least for most of us, we're working with classified information. And as you would imagine, there's a lot of training on how to handle classified information, how to create it, how to store it, how to handle it, how to transport it. But it's still very intimidating because you don't want to make a mistake. This is information that is the unauthorized disclosure could lead to damage to the national security. And so the way I describe the CIA in my book is it's like one of those Russian nesting dolls, right? Where you keep finding more dolls inside. That's what it's like working at the CIA because the CIA is a series of vaults, vaults within vaults, within vaults, within vaults. And to get to the next doll, you've got to go through passcodes and cipher locks and security systems. I'd probably go through a dozen security systems just to get to my desk in the morning to start typing a memo. So it's intimidating. And I talk about this a little more in the book where like when you start working there, you could be holding a yellow stickum in your hand and looking at it and saying, which trash bag should I throw this into? Does it go into that trash bag or this trash bag? Because different classified information has to be disposed of differently. And so it's intimidating. After a while, it all becomes second nature. You don't even think about it. It's like breathing. But initially, it's a very intimidating environment.
So Dangerous Injustice is a look behind the curtain. It's very telling, I think. And I don't know, Joe, I've gotten so cynical in my old age here and the things that have read and witnessed. it's almost like we have entered an age where you don't know who to believe, who to trust, what to believe. Was your book reviewed by the CIA and the intelligence community before you were able to publish it? And were
Yes.
you instructed on redactions and what you could say and what you couldn't?
Absolutely, my book had to be approved by the CIA. When you go to work for the CIA, in order to get a security clearance, one of the things you have to do, and this is outlined in the executive order governing classified information, you have to sign a non-disclosure agreement. And there are lifelong obligations that if you violate, even after you're retired, you can go to jail for. And one of the clauses in the non-disclosure agreement is the pre-publication review clause that says if you write anything that is based upon the work that you did for the government, you must submit that for pre-classification review. Now, some of the authors, well, let me tell you a little bit about my career first because it leads into how I
Sure.
worked with the CIA
Please.
pre-publication review board. I had a unique career in the CIA General Counsel's office. I was assigned to throughout my career 6 different components within the Directorate for Operations, all of which did very different things. But I got a good, broad, and deep understanding of CIA operations because I moved around and I worked in many different components. But that was about half my career. The other half of my career was in the litigation division of the CIA General Counsel's office. I was a line attorney, a deputy, an acting chief, and a chief for about 4 years. So I had about a dozen years in the litigation division of the CIA General Counsel's office, which to my knowledge was unprecedented. And
You were
so
really up there. I mean, you were in, I would call that senior management level position.
I retired as a CIS 4, which is the civilian equivalent of a 2 or 3 star general, and is probably about 1 to 2% of the agency population.
And
But so because I spent so much time in the litigation division, if the CIA wanted to file a lawsuit against an author, I had to approve it. And if an author was suing the CIA, I would be working on that case. And so I have deep knowledge of how the Classification Review Board works, and I'm a known quantity to them. And what authors often do is they just write everything to include classified information. They don't try and distinguish, and then they just send it into the board. And then the board has to do, painstaking line by line reviews. I took an opposite approach. I wrote my book to be at the unclassified level. And for the things that I was writing about, I am the world's expert on those things. And so I knew where the lines were drawn. I walked right up to the edge, but I did not go over it. And so all of my manuscript was approved. They did not ask me to redact a single word.
unbelievable. Wow, that's incredible. So, like yourself, I was trained as a lawyer. So my internal conversations get very confusing. I can argue either side of any argument, whether the bird on the left or the right is going to fly first off the wire, and why it's the left and not the right, or why it's the right and not the left. And my head is always scrambled with conflicting thoughts. So I made the case for my cynicism and my concern about who to believe and what to believe. Is it possible that the CIA is actually filled with legions of patriots, good, honest, ethical people who want this country to be founded on Judeo-Christian beliefs and morality, and that they allowed you to go forward with this book because they share the same values that you do?
No, I know how the system works. So with this type of review, there is only one thing that they're focused on. Does the manuscript contain classified information? That's all they care about. Now, there are, as with everything in the government, politics do come into play. If a former director of the CIA submits a manuscript, I've worked with some former directors to help them actually write their books in an unclassified manner. I've even written a portion of one of our former directors' books. So they might not get as deep a scrutiny as someone like me, because rank does have its privileges within the federal government, and that should come as no surprise. But really, the process only focuses on one thing. Is it classified or not? And I have very strong criticisms for the Democratic Party and for the Biden-Harris administration. And I didn't get any pushback on those criticisms.
I have a few qualifying questions I'd like to run by you, just if you
Sure.
could just give as short an answer as possible, but you're not limited. Is there a deep state, a shadow government, if you will?
I would not go so far as to say a shadow government, but I would say that there is a deep state.
And how what would that look like if you were in an elevator? And we can be in the Freedom Tower, so it's a long ride. But how would you describe the deep state? Who makes it up, and what's the mission and values of that?
So to be part of the deep
Loosely,
state, you would
yeah.
have to be in the government and in the government for enough time to obtain power. And those are career people, right? There are political appointees in all federal agencies, and they are, beholden to the political administration. That's why they're appointed. And career people are accustomed to working with those political appointees. But the deep state, those are the people that stay there and have been there, and they understand the bureaucracy and they know how to manipulate the bureaucracy. That's because you would need to have that experience and knowledge in order to achieve things. And so, and if what you want to achieve is different from the people that are in power, well, you know how to do that and you know how to roadblock things. Those are the people that I would call the deep state.
Okay, Mitch McConnell, deep state or not?
No, because he's
Chuck Schumer,
elected. No, I would not. I would not consider someone who's an elected official to be part of the deep
Nancy
state.
Pelosi,
No,
Liz Cheney,
no, because she's not in the government. Who?
Cheney.
No.
Now, so why do you eliminate them? Because I would think that they would be consummate deep staters.
So they are consummate swamp creatures. But just
Okay.
because you're a swamp creature, in my mind, does not make you a deep stater. To be a deep stater, you got to be working within the system, and you're probably someone that no one knows because you're a career person. You know how to manipulate the bureaucracy. You know how to get things done. You know how not to get things done. In my definition, those are the people who are deep staters. People who are elected officials, yes, they are swamp creatures. People who go in and out of the government are swamp creatures. But when they're not in the government, they're just in the swamp.
Okay, so Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, career politicians, not swamp creatures, but not deep staters.
In my view,
Do they manipulate and use the deep state to achieve their political devices?
absolutely.
Yeah. All right. So who killed JFK?
Well, I'm actually I've studied the assassination. I have my own
Me too.
theory. I think it was a suicide. That's a joke.
I think you just answered my question.
So there's one thing that I am sure of. It was not Lee Harvey Oswald.
Thank you.
Lee, Har
I
Lee
like you
Harvey
better.
Was a lousy shot.
Well,
He,
there
he was
witnesses
he was
who
a
saw.
marksman, which is the lowest level of qualification. That rifle had iron sights. It didn't even have a scope on it. And when the FBI got some of the top sharpshooters in the world, they brought in three of them, and only one of them could recreate that shot. There's no way Lee Harvey Oswald made that shot. I do believe he
Put
brought the
that right.
rifle there, but that's my personal opinion. He was a patsy. He was there. He was in on part of it, but he was not the trigger puller.
So I'll give you my evidence for why it was not Lee Harvey Oswald. There were two ladies who worked in the school book depository who worked proximate to the stairs leading to the sniper's den. They testified that they saw no one leaving to go up those stairs. The only way to get from the break room to the sniper's den would have been up those stairs. They said they were 100% sure no one has climbed those stairs. There are eyewitnesses who saw Oswald in the break room sipping a Coca-Cola 5 minutes
Drinking a
before.
Coke.
Yeah. And then the manager of the school book depository led a Dallas police officer through that break room 5 or 10 minutes after the assassination. And Lee Harvey Oswald was still sitting in the same seat that he was seen sitting in before the shots rang out. So that's one. The point being that there's a large suspicion on my part that Oswald never left that seat. Two, when he was arrested in the theater, the very first words out of his mouth, as you just said, were, "I am a patsy." Number three, he was given the Dallas police administered a paraffin test, what, 4 hours, 3 hours after the assassination. He had no paraffin on his body. So those are, in addition to the things that you highlight, my reasons to discount whether Oswald was even in the sniper's nest. We could spend a whole program about this, but I just wanted to ask that question. I think, but you have eliminated Oswald, but you haven't told me who you think actually orchestrated the assassination.
I honestly don't think we'll ever know.
Okay, so have you read The Unspeakable by, I believe it's MacArthur?
I don't think I've read that one. What was his
How
conclusion?
how about the case of the men who killed Kennedy, the case against LBJ by Roger Stone?
Yeah, that one, but a long time ago.
Okay, so both of those books come to different conclusions. How about David Talbot's The Devil's Chessboard? I'm not trying to put you on the spot.
That's okay. I don't remember which ones I've read. There was just a time where was very interested in it and I was burning through books.
You would remember these books based on your career. So David Talbot, who is a very liberal but respected journalist from California, wrote a very, I felt like, well documented academic work and firmly concludes that Allen Dulles orchestrated the assassination, that Johnson and Hoover covered it up. We can go into all the reasons that he suspects that, but you know that Kennedy and Dulles really hated one another. Dulles blamed Kennedy for the Bay of Pigs. Kennedy blamed Dulles for the Bay of Pigs. And Kennedy fired Dulles. And he also said, I'm going to bust the CIA into 1,000 parts and spread its pieces from the Pacific to the Atlantic. Then along comes MacArthur, the Unspeakable. He likewise concludes that the CIA actually killed Kennedy. Roger Stone believes that LBJ, being the one who would benefit the most from it, orchestrated the assassination. And I have studied LBJ. I've read Masters of the Senate and other works about Johnson. I happen to think that he was a vile, really not good person. And he was also on the verge of being indicted for his corruption in Washington while he was vice president of the United States. So there are a lot of reasons to give him motive and opportunity to have been involved. The point is, I will just say that I'm 99% sure that I agree with David Talbot. And you can not answer the question if you would prefer. Again, really don't want, I like you. I don't want to put you on the spot and make you
I don't mind at all. And
come
there
back.
are, of the many theories, it was the mafia, it was the CIA, it was Castro. When I've looked at all those theories, they all had elements that were persuasive. I think we'll never know. What's fascinating for me is I know from working inside the government how hard it is to keep a secret. And
Yes.
whoever did this actually pulled it off. So
I,
you have
I
to have someone who's smart enough to plan it, and then people who can actually execute that plan and then not talk about it. That is highly unusual.
Well, I would invite you to review those books and see if they alter your opinion